Amid the escalating violence in northern Mozambique, nearly 100,000 people, including some 60,000 children, have been displaced over the past month. Guy Taylor, UNICEF's chief of communication for the Southeast African nation, tells VOA's Carol Van Dam the attacks have forced more than 100 schools to close in Cabo Delgado and Nampula provinces, and many of the displaced children are at risk of violence and exploitation.
There has been sporadic violence and conflict in the north of Mozambique since around 2017, and this is the latest incident of that. And what we're seeing really is that it's children who are suffering the most. They're being, as I say, cut off from things like education, nutrition services, health services. Often they're arriving with absolutely nothing. And these are already some of the most vulnerable people in the country, if not the whole world, really, who are in very precarious circumstances.
Your staffers have seen some of these children on the ground. Can you describe what's going on with these children? I understand many of them have been separated by these attacks from their parents.
Yeah. What we're seeing is that children are really traumatized and they're having trouble coming to terms with what's happening to them. And as you said, in some cases, children have even become separated from their parents. So UNICEF is working very closely with our partners on the ground, with government, to try to reunite children with their parents as quickly as possible. We know that being separated from your family is obviously one of the most traumatic things that can happen to a child. And in cases where it's not possible to immediately reunite them, we're ensuring that they get care and the help they need, including mental health support and obviously food, shelter, access to basic services, while we try to reunite them with their families.
How many children have you documented of these kinds of cases where they've been separated and traumatized, obviously, that you're trying to help?
Yeah. So far, we've recorded 182 cases where children have been separated from their families. We've managed to reunite about 57. So it's a very important part of the work that we're doing. We're continuing to work to reunite the rest, but we're also doing a lot of other things. We're working to ensure that populations have access to clean water, sanitation, that children can continue learning. We're setting up temporary learning spaces and making available teaching and learning materials. We're working to protect children from violence and make sure that in these very sort of difficult circumstances that they're safe, they have places to play, to be children, and to try and have some kind of sense of normality amongst the chaos.
Of these people that UNICEF is treating or helping, how many would you describe in severe acute malnutrition state?
Well, this is always a big risk, because these people are already extremely vulnerable people, and they're people who already have quite high rates of malnutrition. We know that in Mozambique as a whole, I think the rate of stunting, which is when people are too short for their age, is around 38%. And there are many tens of thousands of children who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. So amongst these populations, there's obviously a high prevalence of that. So what we're doing is we're working to screen children. That means take measurements, weigh them, and then when we discover or when we diagnose children with that severe acute malnutrition, we make sure they immediately get access to therapeutic food and treatment, which helps them to quickly put the weight back on and return to a state of health.
Are your staffers safe where they're located?
Well, there's always a risk, but we have strict protocols in place to ensure the safety of our staff to the greatest degree possible. But obviously, we're operating in a fairly dynamic and volatile situation, so there is always some element of risk involved.
Is there anything you want to mention about the situation that I've not asked you that you think it's important to?
Yeah, I would just say that I think the response is very overstretched here. Even before this current outbreak, Mozambique had a serious humanitarian situation with climate shocks, conflict, violence that's been going on for many years now. We're really trying to meet the needs of these people, but the needs are really outweighing the capacity and the resources available to respond. So I think more support is urgently needed here.
That was Guy Taylor, UNICEF's Chief of Communication for Mozambique, speaking with my colleague Carol Van Dam.